All right, so my plugin for this competition is called the TapeWorm. It is a modulation plugin inspired by guitar effects pedals, largely from two different groups. One would be vintage chorus pedals like the Boss CE1 and CE2, and the other would be more contemporary lo-fi pedals such as the Cooper Effects Generation Loss or the Fairfield Circuitry Shallow Water. And one thing that these lo-fi pedals have in common with the vintage chorus pedals is they're modulation based. And that modulation is usually combined with some sort of lower fidelity aesthetic like a VHS tape or vinyl sounds. But at their heart, any of these pedals is going to be more or less a vibrato or a chorus. So for the tapeworm, the lo-fi sort of aesthetic that I chose to approach here is cassette tapes and cassette tape decks. Now there are tons of tape plugins, there are tons of cassette plugins whose goal is to create the sound of recording to tape or recording to a cassette tape, and that's not necessarily what the tapeworm is. The tapeworm is, again, it's a chorus plugin. It's meant to create some modulation of different kinds. Let's pull up a block diagram here. So one piece of inspiration from the cassette tape sound was a compander, which a lot of cheaper boomboxes and tape recorders used to attempt to work around the high noise floor of cassette tapes. And so the first thing that the signal hits when it enters the tapeworm is a compressor, and right before the mix knob there is an expander. Both have relatively low ratios with a 4:1 on the compressor and a 1:2 on the expander, and the compressor has a very wide knee, so it should be fairly subtle. Another tape inspiration comes from the introduction of bandpass white noise to create sort of a tape hiss, and the LFO itself is inspired by cassette sounds with what's labeled as the random knob sort of representing tape flutter. But one thing that the tapeworm does differently is introduce the smoothing parameter as user definable. And the range of this parameter allows the user to have the LFO shaped anything from a slightly rounded sample and hold to a very, very smooth but unpredictable and natural sounding random modulation. Finally, we hit a saturation block, and the saturation here is not meant to be tape saturation. It is instead emulating the type of growl and grit you might get from pushing the front end of a Boss CE1 pedal. It's an analog model of germanium diodes, which are not a part of the CE1, but that was the way that I decided to approach this, and I'm pretty happy with the results. Now I think let's just listen.